Hello everyone, Andy Wolverton here, and today I have a report on my Alfred Hitchcock project, which began last year, an ongoing exploration of all of Hitchcock's available feature films in the order of their release. I want to see how Hitchcock developed as a director, and so far I'm making several interesting discoveries. Now, these are no doubt discoveries that many others have made for years or even decades. This is really more of a personal journey for me since I've been a Hitchcock fan since I was a teenager. Now, I don't claim to be a Hitchcock expert or film scholar, far from it. I just want to better understand and appreciate Hitchcock's work. So I hope you'll join me for this exploration. So my plan is to watch and review each film on my blog. I've watched and blogged about 10 films so far, and today I'm sharing some of my thoughts on the first 5 of those movies. Again, I hope you'll check out my blog for the full reviews. Now, understand that these are not exhaustive reviews, again, just my personal observations. They're also not done with extensive research, but I do consult various print and online resources for each film. In particular, I access Hitchcock's own words in the book Hitchcock Truffaut and 2 volumes of Hitchcock interviews edited by Sidney Gottlieb. So in my reviews and here, I will also tell you how I access these films and where you can view them as well. So let's kick things off with Hitchcock's very first feature film, The Pleasure Garden, from 1925, which I found on YouTube. Now, from the very first shot of his very first film, I find it very interesting that Hitchcock opens with a scene involving a staircase. Now, just think of how many times Hitchcock utilizes a staircase in his films. The obvious ones that come to mind for me are Notorious, Vertigo, Psycho, but there are many others. So we see some of that right at the very beginning here. The opening of The Pleasure Garden shows several chorus girls rapidly descending a spiral staircase to emerge onto the stage of the Pleasure Garden Theatre in London. And it's here where a chorus girl named Patsy, played by Virginia Valli, offers help to a newcomer named Jill, played by Carmelita Garotti, I think is how you say it. Jill has come for an audition, and she wins the audition and actually becomes a sensation, overshadowing all of the other dancers. Now, will Patsy become jealous of the girl that she helped? Will mayhem follow? What about the wealthy, lecherous men who are attracted to Jill? And what about Jill's fiancé? The Pleasure Garden has all the earmarks of a light comedy or even a melodrama, and you think you know where it's going, but the film gets surprisingly dark, even this early in Hitchcock's career. And although it's his first feature, Hitchcock has an unmistakable air of confidence. He knows exactly where he wants to place the camera and for precisely how long. We also see several Hitchcock themes that are going to be played out over his entire career: theft, betrayal, murder, broken relationships, sexuality, and obsession. So for Hitchcock's second feature, The Mountain Eagle from 1926, this is unfortunately a lost film. And although it's likely none of us will ever see the picture, I did some research on it and wrote some of my findings on the blog. The bottom line for The Mountain Eagle is that Hitchcock himself didn't care for it, and he really considered its loss to be kind of a good thing. So we may never know, but again, you can check out my blog, and there's lots of other writing about the film, especially Hitchcock's own thoughts about it. Next, we have The Lodger, A Story of the London Fog from 1927, a film that really looks and feels like the Hitchcock most people are familiar with. Now, since we don't have The Mountain Eagle to look at, we can only compare The Lodger to his first film, The Pleasure Garden. And in doing so, we see that a great amount of maturity has taken place from that first film to this one. With The Lodger, Hitchcock grabs our attention from the very beginning with a close-up of a woman screaming. Naturally, since this is Hitchcock, she is a blonde. Something else we would come to see later. Now, somewhere in London, a killer known only as the Avenger is murdering women. Always blondes and always on Tuesdays. Maybe you want to stay inside on Tuesdays, ladies. In the midst of this frightening development, a stranger seeks to rent a room from the respectable Bunting family. Now, this lodger, played by Ivor Novello, is tall, mysterious, and keeps the lower portion of his face covered. Hey, Mrs. Bunting, probably not a good idea to take this guy in, but when you need the rent money, I guess you can't be too choosy. So the lodger himself is certainly very interesting, mysterious, and creepy. But things get more interesting, mysterious, and creepy when Daisy Bunting, played by June Tripp, becomes attracted to this new lodger, even bringing breakfast up to his room. Careful, Daisy. And also renting a room in the same house is a man named Joe, played by Malcolm Keane. Now, Joe is a policeman and, of course, he's in love with Daisy. And again, we think we know where this is going, and maybe we do, but part of the fun with The Lodger comes from watching Hitchcock maturing as a visual storyteller. There's so many great shots going on in this film. One of them involves a staircase. There's another great shot involving the actions of the lodger in his second floor room, while the Bunting family are together in the floor directly below. Now, the lodger is pacing back and forth in his room, and that causes the light fixtures below to shake and sway. Then Hitchcock gives us an image of the lodger's legs from below, and Novello is really walking on thick glass, but it looks like he's walking on air. And this is a really startling and effective shot. It's one of those shots that you look at and think, this is 1927, how did they do that? He was walking on glass, literally. Hitchcock also makes great use of shadows in this film, very precise editing, and many, many more techniques that he uses here. If you haven't picked up the Criterion Blu-ray of The Lodger, I highly recommend that you do so. And if you do pick up that Blu-ray, you'll also have, as an extra on that disc, Hitchcock's next film, Downhill, from 1927. Now, Ivor Novello returns in this one, this time as a student at an English boarding school. Now, the opening title card reads, "Here is a tale of two schoolboys who made a pact of loyalty. One of them kept it at a price." Now, Novello's character Roddy is not only the school's rugby hero, he's also set to be named captain of the school. Roddy's best friend, Tim, played by Robin Irvine, is also seeking to make his way, looking for greatness, and in his case, it's in the form of a scholarship to Oxford. So Roddy and Tim meet this girl named Mabel, played by Arnett Benson. And everything seems to be going pretty well until Mabel later complains that one of the guys raped her. At a hearing, she discloses which one, but I won't tell you here. But I will say that life for both Roddy and Tim takes a drastic change. Now, Downhill isn't a great film, but it is a good wrong man story, a theme Hitchcock would return to frequently. The film is equal parts fascinating and frustrating, and for quite a while this will serve as Hitchcock's longest film at an hour and 45 minutes. I think the film is a little bit too long for what it does. It has some other problematic elements, which I get into in my review, but it's still well worth your time. I wish I could be as positive about Hitchcock's next film, Easy Virtue, from 1927. What we have here is a courtroom opening, which is promising. And here we have a woman named Larita, played by Isabelle Jans, gives testimony in her divorce case, which quickly moves into a flashback, showing the audience that this isn't a typical divorce case. This one involves adultery and a fight between Lorita's husband and her lover that results in death for one of them. Or was it suicide? You can read my review for some of the problematic elements of this film, but we do see more staircases, a train, which is something that happens in Hitchcock quite a bit, and perhaps a dress rehearsal for Rebecca in a scene that reminds us of Mrs. Danvers and the new Mrs. De Winter. You see a lot of this in some of these early films, scenes that are going to appear later in much later films. So it's exciting to see a lot of these things develop in these early films. Still, Easy Virtue is probably my biggest disappointment from this first batch of films, but it still contains several items of interest and is definitely worth looking at. I found this one on a Mill Creek box set called Alfred Hitchcock, A Legacy of Suspense. This is a 4-disc DVD set. The quality of these films is not so good, but you can get 18 of Hitchcock's early films and 2 episodes from Alfred Hitchcock Presents for under $10. So it might be worth it to see these films if you can't see them in any other way. Now, speaking of that, there are, or there will be, better versions of many of these films available. If they're not already available, they will be soon. Next time, we'll talk a bit about the Hitchcock 9 project, a BFI restoration of all 9 of Hitchcock's silent films. Some of the next 5 films I will cover have been beautifully restored and feature some wonderful commentaries, and we will cover that in a future video. So, these are Hitchcock's first 5 films. On my blog, you can search for Alfred Hitchcock Project and find reviews for these and the next 5, which I'll cover here soon. Or you can go to the link that I'm going to provide in the notes below, and that will take you to the table of contents, which I update each time I watch and review one of Hitchcock's films. So I hope you'll join me on this venture. Maybe even you can watch the films as I'm watching them and leave your own thoughts and comments on these videos. So if you have any questions or comments, please put those below, and happy viewing. Everybody take care.